Today's lesson is scones and biscuits, more than meets the eye. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
And today we're going to be talking some more about scones and biscuits. We certainly hope you had a wonderful Christmas meal yesterday. And, of course, you might still have some leftovers today. And those leftovers might include scones and biscuits, although I have a feeling it's best to eat these pastry items fresh out of the oven and not to eat them a day later.
That's right, because I think if you leave scones for too long, and biscuits as well, they become harder, right? It's hard to eat, and it just doesn't taste as fluffy or fresh. So yesterday we learned that these are two different types of pastries that were brought over to the U.S. by the British. And when they came over to the U.S., some people in the Northeast, they tried to change up the recipe a bit by adding eggs or cream to the batter that made the scones taste more like cake than bread.
Indeed. So someone from England might scoff at that, or the Americans really screwed up scones for everybody. But on the other hand, they may actually enjoy the new version. And today, of course, we're going to switch from speaking about scones to talking about biscuits. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson right now and find out some more information about biscuits.
Compared to scones, biscuits have a more complicated story, in part because the word biscuit itself has different meanings in different places. In Britain, a biscuit is what an American would call a cookie, a small flat cake that's dry and sweet and often eaten for dessert or as a snack. In the US, on the other hand, a biscuit might resemble a scone in appearance, being round and bulky. But once you bite into one, there's no mistaking that they're much lighter, fluffier, and more buttery. This texture is achieved by using flour made from soft wheat, a type of grain that grows in the American South, and by incorporating a fatty ingredient, such as buttermilk or lard, into the original recipe.
大家好，首先第一部分我们来看形容词 complicated， 它的意思是复杂的或是难懂的。例如 It took a few hours for James to learn all the rules of that complicated game. James 花了几小时才学会那个复杂游戏的所有规则。又或者说 The idea was not very complicated.So the students learned it quickly. 那个观念并不是很难懂，所以学生很快就学会了。接下来看到动词 resemble， 意思是和点点点相像或是类似。例如 Tim resembles his uncle in this photograph. Tim 在这张照片里看起来很像他叔叔。或是 While the two signatures do resemble each other, they're not the same. 那两个签名看起来确实很类似，不过是不一样的。再来是形容词 fluffy， 这个字是松软的或是蓬松的意思。例如 Lying down in the fluffy grass is delightful to Bill. 躺在松软的草地上对 Bill 来说是一件令人愉快的事。或者 Washing towels with a cup of vinegar can make them fluffy again. 洗毛巾时加一杯醋，可让毛巾恢复蓬松。下一个介绍动词 incorporate， 它的意思是把点点点合并或是包含，也可以是将点点点包括在内的意思。例如 This small-scale school was incorporated into a bigger school since there were 0 students in the past couple of years. 这所规模较小的学校因为在过去几年没有学生而被并入了较大的学校中。或是 The painter incorporates religious icons into his works. 那名画家将宗教圣像融入他的作品中。
Let's talk about part 1 of our article, and today we're talking about biscuits. Compared to scones, biscuits have a more complicated story, in part because of the word biscuit itself has different meanings in different places. So when we hear the word biscuit, it's more complicated because, like we mentioned in day 1, biscuit can mean different things to different people. So in Britain, we'll think about biscuits as being a small cookie-like thing. But in the U.S., a biscuit looks like a scone but doesn't have the exact same texture or doesn't taste exactly like a scone. So today we're going to learn about why it's a complicated story. And complicated basically just means that it involves many different aspects aspects to it, so there might be lots of different reasons why biscuits are complicated.
That's right. And of course, whenever you try to compare things between the U.S. and Britain and you try to explain it to students here in Taiwan, it can get quite complicated. I remember many times trying to explain to students here the difference between soccer and football, because in America, the word football refers to their own kind of sport that is not played in England. And if you're in England, you have to call the sport where you kick a round ball around with your feet and you can't use your hand. You have to call that soccer, or football actually over there. But they know what soccer is. As you can tell from my explanation, things have gotten quite complicated with the definition of those words. And yes, indeed, when we talk about biscuits, yeah, the definition can be more complicated.
So let's learn more about exactly what the difference is between an American biscuit and a British biscuit. In Britain, a biscuit is what an American would call a cookie, a small flat cake that's dry and sweet and often eaten for dessert or as a snack. So basically, it's what we would think of as a cookie. And British people, they will have their sweet biscuit or their cookie often with their tea, their afternoon tea or their coffee. And the most popular that we'll see are tin cans or tin containers with different shapes of cookies. Now, in the U.S., on the other hand, a biscuit might resemble a scone in appearance, being round and bulky. So when you're in the U.S. and you ask for a biscuit, you're not going to get a cookie. You're going to get something else. And it's something that resembles a scone. So resemble is to have similar appearance or qualities that are in common with something else that are similar, because they're both pastries, right? So they're similar. So it might look like a scone, but it's not. And it's being round and bulky. Bulky basically means that it's large in size. Sometimes it's really big. But in this case, a biscuit is just something that's a lot bigger than, let's say, a cookie. And it has an interesting shape. It's not a normal shape, so making it funny looking sometimes.
I tend to think of American biscuits as resembling cupcakes, sort of. They have a similar shape and a similar texture. They're kind of soft and spongy. And we're also describing biscuits in the U.S. to be more bulky, which means they take up more space. Bulky can be a bad thing, of course, if you've got all sorts of bulky boxes in your house and you keep bumping into them. You need to get rid of all that junk because those boxes are so bulky. And again, a biscuit might resemble a scone in appearance, at least in the USA. To resemble means to look like something. I could say that when I first came to Taiwan, lots of people said I resembled Jeff Daniels, the actor. Of course, he's no longer popular, so of course, people nowadays are probably not going to understand that reference, but has anybody told you you resemble anybody, maybe like your sister or something?
Yeah, a lot of people think we're twins.
Oh, really?
Right.
Okay, even though you're 5 years apart in age, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so yes, indeed, a biscuit might resemble a scone in appearance, and the biscuits are round and bulky, as are scones. But once you bite into one, once you bite into a biscuit, there's no mistaking that they're much lighter, fluffier, and more buttery. So that's the American biscuit here. If you bite into one, there's no mistaking. It's absolutely clear. You won't make this mistake at all. You will discover that they're lighter, they're fluffier, and more buttery.
So when you hold a biscuit, if you squeeze it, it's kind of puffy. Whereas if you hold a scone, it's a lot heavier and also a lot more dense. So that's the main difference between how they feel and how the difference in weight. And this is how we describe a biscuit being lighter and fluffier and more buttery. So when something is fluffy, it's an adjective. And in food, it means that it has a light texture and it has a lot of air inside. For example, Taiwanese bread is really light and fluffy. There's a lot of air in the bread. So that's something that Taiwanese people like in terms of texture for the bread. But sometimes foreigners or visitors, they might come here and think, oh no, the bread isn't dense enough. It's not heavy enough, because they want to have more bite to their bread. So that's how you describe a bread or a pastry being fluffy.
I think Europeans say the same thing about American bread, that it's fluffier than they're used to. And indeed, we're talking about biscuits. To me, they have more of the consistency of cakes, okay? Not so much scones. Again, as you said, scones are denser, they're heavier, and they probably require more chewing to consume them. And biscuits are lighter, they're fluffier and more buttery. We do use the word fluffy to describe the fur of cats or the fur of rabbits. So that rabbit has very fluffy fur, or that cat has very fluffy fur. And also we're describing biscuits in the US as being more buttery. They have more of a buttery taste. They taste more like they have butter on them.
This texture is achieved by using flour made from soft wheat, which is a type of grain that grows in the American South, and by incorporating a fatty ingredient such as buttermilk or lard into the original recipe. So here we can see this is how the Americans, they changed the recipe a bit. They changed it so that they can match it to the flavors of the American palate or what Americans would like. So they use different ingredients. They incorporated new ingredients. And to incorporate something basically is to combine different ingredients into one. And you want to take in all to make something new. So in this case, they are incorporating a fatty ingredient.
Right, and some examples of fatty ingredients would be buttermilk, which is kind of a sour form of milk, or lard, which is fat from a pig's belly, I believe, and they put that into the original recipe to give it its own unique flavor. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's listen now to the second part.
For breakfast, biscuits often come with eggs, bacon, and hash browns. And for lunch or dinner, biscuits topped with gravy are a popular companion for fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, and other dishes.
第二部分我们来看到名词 companion， 它有同伴、伙伴或是伴侣的意思。例如 My friend Beverly was my closest companion in high school. 我的朋友 Beverly 在高中时是我最亲近的伙伴。或者 After losing her beloved companion, Betty always felt lonely and empty. 在失去挚爱的伴侣后 Betty 总是感到孤独和空虚。
Welcome back. Let's talk about eating biscuits for breakfast. For breakfast, biscuits often come with eggs, bacon, and hash browns. And for lunch or dinner, biscuits topped with gravy are a popular companion for fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, and other dishes.
Again, this is describing American cooking here. So yes, if you have them for breakfast, well, they'll come with eggs, bacon, and hash browns. Hash browns are basically shredded potatoes, and then they're fried in a skillet with oil, and you cook them on one side, and they become nice and crispy. Then you cook them on the other side. Some people only cook them on one side, though. I like them cooked on both sides because they're crispier that way. And so that's how you can enjoy biscuits for breakfast, but you can also have them for lunch or dinner. They will be topped with gravy, as you mentioned early in the lesson. What exactly is gravy?
Gravy is basically a sauce that is made from the fat and juices that come out of a meat that we're cooking. So, for example, if we're cooking Christmas turkey, in our little pot, the fats and the juices will come out, and then you'll take those fats and juices and cook them, and sometimes you'll add more flour to it so it becomes a thick texture, and you'll use this as your gravy, the sauce that you're going to put on your mashed potatoes, your turkey, and in this case, our biscuit.
Right, and of course they are quite tasty, and biscuits topped with gravy are a popular companion for fried chicken. Yes, indeed, it is popular to see in the United States people eating fried chicken with biscuits, and those biscuits will have gravy on them, so that's a popular companion or a popular combination. A companion is just somebody or something that goes with somebody or something else. So, of course, older people, maybe they feel kind of lonely, so they adopt a pet as a companion. They have this dog with them, and they don't feel so lonely anymore.
And in this case, when we're describing a companion for foods, it's a pairing of different foods that just matches each other.
Indeed, and of course, this is a good combination, or biscuits topped with gravy are a good companion with macaroni and cheese. I've never had it that way. Macaroni and cheese is just taking a certain kind of noodle and putting cheese on it and butter and mixing it up maybe with some spices. It's a popular dish in the United States, but I haven't really seen it in other places. But you'll find this dish in the United States. And, of course, biscuits topped with gravy can be a good companion with other dishes as well, which we don't have time to get into right now. What we do have time to get into is listening to the third part of our lesson. We'll come right back to talk about it.
To summarize, biscuits and scones may have lots in common, but they're actually quite distinct. So, if you could choose just one, which would you try first?
第三部分介绍动词 summarize， 意思是概述或是总结。比如说 Monica's research paper was quite long, so she summarized the basics in the first paragraph. Monica 的研究论文蛮长的，所以她在第一段概述了基本要点。或者可以说 To summarize, it's been a good year overall. 整体而言，这是个不错的一年。最后来看片语 have in common， 它是有共通点的意思。例如 Except for their looks, the twins have nothing in common. 除了长相外，这对双胞胎没有什么共同点。或是 I have little in common with Jane, but we are still good friends. 我和 Jane 几乎没有共同点，但是我们仍是好朋友。
Let's talk about the third part of our lesson, which is to summarize, biscuits and scones may have lots in common, but they're actually quite distinct. So, if you could choose just one, which would you try first? So basically here we see the word summarize, and it's just to sum up our whole article that we have read, and we are recapping or organizing all the main parts or the main points that we have learned about. And in this case, we've learned a lot about biscuits and scones, and we know that they have lots in common, but they're actually quite distinct.
Exactly. So I could say, for example, that my friend Polly is from Taidong, and she speaks Taiwanese with a distinct accent. And she has also said that other people in Taiwan kind of make fun of her because people from Taidong speak with kind of a unique or distinct accent when they speak Taiwanese. But we're talking about the flavor and the consistency and the appearance of scones and biscuits. Yeah, they're quite distinct. Those features are distinct, but they do have things in common. So if you could choose one, which one would you try first? And if you have tried them both before, well, just imagine that you hadn't tried them before and maybe think about how you would answer this question. And I guess we'll try to answer that question in our discussion starter, which is coming up in just a couple of seconds. But right now we're going to finish our lesson by listening to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分有提到，在美国，比斯吉在外观上或许看起来像司康，都是呈现圆形且厚实。不过一旦你咬了一口，就不可能认错，因为它们更轻盈、松软，还有奶油味。好，文中是用 There's no mistaking 加上 that 子句去表达说什么什么是不可能弄错的，什么什么是再清楚不过的。那这样的句型是利用 There is no 加动词 ing 去表达是不可能怎么样的，无法什么什么的。它就跟 It is impossible to 加原形动词意思差不多。那我们以下补充几个常见的用法。第一个补充的是There is no denying 是表达无可否认怎么样怎么样。例如 There is no denying that chocolate is popular all over the world. 不 不可否认的是，巧克力在世界各地都很受欢迎。第二个补充的是 there is no telling 或者是 there is no knowing 去表达无从得知什么什么。那么后面常常会接 WH 疑问词或者是 if 所引导的名词子句，例如 There's no telling how she will react to the news. 不知道她对这个消息会有什么样的反应，无从得知。好，那第三个补充的是 There's no stopping somebody 或是 There's no holding somebody 是表达阻止不了某人，挡也挡不住某人。举例来说Once she starts talking about her children, there's no stopping her. 她一旦开始聊起她的小孩啊，就没完没了，阻止不了她呢。好，那么课文下一句写到说 This texture is achieved by using flour made from soft wheat. 这种质地是因为使用了软小麦制成的面粉。好，那句子里面的 made 前方是省略了 which is 或者是 that is。那这边我们就来整理一下表达由什么什么制成的用法。第一种呢，我们可以用 be made of， 那是用来说明构成的材质原料。你从成品的外观看得出它的制作原料，像 lots of toys are made of plastic， 许多玩具是塑胶制的。第二个补充的用法是 be made from， 是用来说明产品的来源。你从成品外观看不出原料，或者是说啊，从制作原料到成品，它的本质已经改变了。就像课文的用法 flour made from soft wheat， 指的是由软小麦制成的面粉，从成品外观看不出原料了。我们也来造个例句 Cheese is made from milk。Cheese 是由奶类制成。那么第三个补充的是 be made with， 是用来说明所含的原料成分。那这个句型并没有强调制作过程，通常只是在说明食材原料为何。举例来说 The sauce is made with soy sauce and vinegar， 这个酱汁是用酱油和醋制成的。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Complicated。The instructions were so complicated that I had to look online for some guidance. Resemble. Although they're sisters, Ella and Dana don't really resemble each other in either appearance or personality. Incorporate. We're hoping to incorporate more customer feedback into the final report. Companion. Pizza and a cold cola are the perfect companions for a cozy movie night. Summarize.For today's quiz, Mrs. Franklin asked us to summarize the main points of the chapter. Distinct. Seals have some distinct features that set them apart from sea lions.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter for today. The question is, do you prefer scones or biscuits, and why? Or if you've never eaten either, which would you prefer to try?
I like biscuits better than scones. In fact, I love biscuits because I love biscuits with gravy. I love its texture, the way it tastes, and that buttery feeling in my mouth. And I've been missing having some really good biscuits, so I want to try to figure out how to make my own biscuits at home.
Oh, wow, that's making me crave biscuits myself. But, I have tried both of them, and I think they're each unique and outstanding in their own ways. Some days I'm in the mood for eating scones. Some days I'm in the mood for eating biscuits with gravy. So, yeah, they're equally tasty. It just depends on the occasion and the time. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program. And please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Kiki.
See you next time.